Hi everyone, I thought I'd start a new series, so I'm going to do a few videos on some very instructive games from Bobby Fischer, who, as I'm sure you know, is widely regarded as one of the greatest players in the history of the game. And he was just brilliant at all aspects of chess, so it's no wonder his games are a marvel to watch and learn from. He had the white pieces in this game, and it was played against James Sherwin at the New Jersey tournament in 1957, when Bobby was still a young teenager, and his opponent was about 10 years older, and the following year would become an international master. As usual, Bobby opened with e4, and after c5, knight f3, e6, and d3, the game is going into a closed Sicilian, which is usually fairly quiet, and generally there are no exchanges until almost all of the minor pieces are developed. So knight c6, g3, knight f6, bishop g2, bishop e7, castles, castles, down and b to d2, which results in a position identical to the development of a King's Indian attack for white, and Bobby used this opening from time to time in his early career. Rook b8, and Fischer noted that Sherwin made this move using only his little finger, as if to emphasize the mystery of it and perhaps try to intimidate his younger opponent, which is ridiculous really for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's not the best move in the position. d5 would have been stronger. And secondly, intimidation amongst other tactics simply didn't work against Bobby, even at his young age. So here he played rook e1, and then came d6 and c3, just preparing d4, and then b6 and d4. And now he's achieved a perfect pawn center, which is partly thanks to Sherwin's rook move here that could reasonably be called a waste of tempo. And it's one thing getting a strong center, as Bobby has here, but using it effectively is a different matter. The important thing to recognize is that due to the central squares that white's controlling with his pawns here, these four here, it's difficult for black to maneuver his pieces into defensive positions if white decides to attack on the kingside, which is what Bobby now pursues. Sherwin played queen c7 here, which is really a dubious move. Like, his plan was to get a rook to d8 and support central activity, and with the queen on c7 he's also trying to contest control of e5, but it's not a very good plan. Better here, and what you'd expect nowadays is c takes d4, and after c takes d4, bishop b7, which is a modern type of position. But 50 years ago it wasn't considered a good way to play, which partially explains why Sherwin didn't go for it. So then Bobby played e5, which is a strong central push that forces the knight away from f6, meaning that the king side for black is significantly weakened. And knight d5 was played here, but it was probably better to exchange pawns before moving the knight with d takes e5, d takes e5, and now knight d5, because now the pawn on e5 is effectively isolated, at least temporarily. But d5 was played anyway, so then e takes d6, bishop takes d6, and knight e4, which is a strong move that gives black a few problems to sort out. The bishop is threatened here, so if, to preserve the bishop pair, bishop e7 is played, then c4 is strong. After knight f6, bishop f4 wins the exchange, which is another reason why queen c7 was a bad move. Or if instead c takes d4, then c4 again wins the exchange. Here Fritz recommends knight b d4, but then knight takes d6, queen takes d6, bishop f4, and bishop takes b8. So c4 is what Sherwin did play. And here Bobby played knight takes d6, and black has lost not only the bishop pair, but more importantly his good bishop, seeing as most of his pawns are on light squares. And bishop b7 as a plan for the remaining bishop is a bit slow, especially considering that Bobby now gets kingside initiative immediately after queen takes d6 and knight g5, with threats on h7 looming. Sherwin sensed the danger here and tried to defend with knight c e7, but really he should have got rid of the knight straight away with h6. Despite white gaining further initiative with knight e4 and the weakening that playing h6 involves around the kingside, it's preferable to the game continuation with knight c7, because now Bobby played knight c2 with mate threats on h7, meaning that h6 won't work as a defensive measure. What he did play was knight g6, and then came h4, which is threatening h5, which would win the knight due to the mate threat on h7. So knight f6 was played in order to prevent that. And here Bobby played a great move, and it's the strongest in the position, with knight takes h7. And he'd correctly calculated that he was winning in every line. And the point here is that after a later h5, after this knight is recaptured, after h5, this knight on g6 will have to move, and then bishop f4 will win the exchange. So that's one of the ideas, one of the plans, the winning plans that Bobby had in this game. So then came knight takes h7, h5, and knight h4, and then bishop h4, which is much stronger than g takes h4, because then bishop b7. And after, say for example, bishop takes b7, rook takes b7, white can no longer win the exchange as planned, because f4 is no longer protected by the pawn that was here. And in this position, white's only a pawn up with a badly exposed king. So playing bishop f4 is much stronger at this stage. Then queen d8 and g takes h4. Again is stronger than taking the rook, because if bishop takes b8, then knight takes g2. And white's kingside is dangerously weakened, especially because he's lacking this light squared bishop, and black on the other hand has a light squared bishop. And so g takes h4, and it's much more accurate to play this way, and more aggressive and more devastating really to pursue a kingside attack. And here Sherwin played at rook b7, which is a clever move really, offering the exchange, but again it would weaken white's kingside too badly, and Bobby refused it and again played the strongest move with h6. And now black has a difficult decision. If g6, then h5 is strong, or if f5, then there are many ways to gain a winning advantage. One is simply bishop takes b7, and after bishop takes b7, f3 to stop the action of this bishop. If bishop takes f3, then rook e3, bishop e4, queen h2, and when the rook comes over to join in the attack, it's pretty much unstoppable. And what Sherwin went for instead was queen takes h4, which was the best move really. Then comes h takes g7, king takes g7, and now material is equal, but it's easy to see that white's position is much better. Rook d8 was probably a better move in this position, because now the pawn on g7 can be used as a shield. So anyway, the game continuation was rook e4, which develops the rook with tempo, because bishop e5 check is threatened, which would win the queen. So queen h5 and rook e3, as the bishop on f4 no longer needs protection from the queen, and also so the rook can swing over to the g and h files with dangerous threats. So f5, which is played to block out the attack on this knight here, which allows the king to run away if necessary, and it won't be tied down to the protection of the knight, and also because rook h3 is threatened, and that was played anyway now. Then comes queen e8 and bishop e5 check, which is exploiting the fact that e5 has been permanently weakened after f5 was played. And again, this was the strongest move, and much stronger than exchanging off either of the bishops for rooks with either bishop takes b7 or bishop to h6 check. And even winning both of Sherwin's rooks would not be as accurate as the game continuation, which is the most crushing attack possible after bishop e5 check. So then comes knight f6, which is really the only move, and queen d2, and Sherwin should have resigned here really, but he played on with king f7, then came queen g5, queen e7 to protect the knight, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, rook h7 check, which is planning to win a piece on b7 after the queens come off. So king e8, queen takes f6, rook takes h7. If instead rook takes f6, then bishop takes b7. bishop takes b7, rook takes b7, and white is a clear rook up. So rook takes h7, but then bishop c6 check, and here Sherwin resigned. His only reasonable option is bishop d7, but then will come queen takes c6 check in any case, and it's completely lost. So it was a great game from the young genius. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.